Weekly Bets. Weekly Bets.
And we're live.
We're live? Whoa! Hey everybody! Guess what? It's Friday! Not just any Friday though. Friday the 13th. Is it lucky? Is it unlucky? I guess we'll find out. But it's been a wild week, am I right?
Wild week, new episode, new microphone situation. We're running the table mic, as you guys can see. Everyone on mic watch, note that.
Yeah, we've got a whole constituent of people who just text us every day about what mic we're using, and they'll notice. They'll notice. If you don't notice, they'll notice.
Yep.
Well, guys, it's been a pretty wild week.
Yes.
There hasn't been a bunch of crazy news like normal, but the market is speaking volumes, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. I think that's a great place to kick off today's episode. I'll turn to you, Brandon, as the show's resident markets and price expert. So it does seem like the most important thing to discuss this week is the BTC market. Can you just give me kind of a brief synopsis of where we're at as of today and as of this week as a whole?
Yeah. So let's look at the price literally right now. It's pretty cool how you can do this.
We've not done this. We should do this more.
Yeah, we could. We're sitting right here at $16,267 per Bitcoin. That is crazy. I mean, sometimes you got to take a step back and think back to 2 months ago. When
Last week.
Yeah. I mean, we've had a pretty meteoric rise here, and no one's paying attention. I mean, that's been kind of the refrain on Twitter and on people's minds is here we are, 15% off all-time highs, 20% off all-time highs, and no one is talking, no one's paying attention. Where is everybody? Guys, this is the Bitcoin has been this valuable for less than 2 weeks of its life or something like that. I mean, it's something crazy low. And yet here we are, and we are showing no signs of slowing down. And the mainstream is just looking at the presidential election and COVID stuff and completely ignoring this. So, I think you have to start by examining the fact that we are living in a Bitcoin bubble, but not like a bubble, like no one's paying attention and we're just all talking to ourselves bubble. And so from that perspective, all that means is that, the retail hasn't gotten in yet. The mainstream aren't paying attention. There's no mania phase here. We're moving on fundamentals. So I think it's really exciting. And I think that, you should just expect this to keep going towards all-time highs.
Yeah, so to zoom out a little bit, though, I mean, we're getting there and we're moving super quick, but we're not too terribly close to the price all-time high. If I had to guess, and I'm not the resident prediction maker, that'd be you. We might have another at least 1 week of weekly bits before we're hitting all-time high. It's a little bit further away. But what does seem right around the corner is an all-time high in Bitcoin's market cap. And we were talking about this a little bit this morning. Fill me in. Why is market cap an important metric, and why might some people even say market cap all-time highs are more exciting than price all-time highs?
Yeah, well, I mean, a perfect example of it's a good point, right? The price of a Bitcoin's infinitely divisible. That doesn't really tell you that much. It doesn't tell you as much as the market cap. The market cap is, of course, the price times the total supply, and that gives you kind of the total value of Bitcoin.
In circulation, out there, yeah.
It's how do you want to say how valuable Bitcoin is? You would actually look at the market cap of Bitcoin, not the price of a single Bitcoin. So you're right. We are actually really close to all-time highs. The all-time high market cap, I think, is somewhere around $328 billion. And I think last we checked this morning, we were sitting at close to 300 billion, maybe a little bit above that.
It's close.
So, we are very close to hitting the all-time high market cap, which is crazy. I mean, we only hit that all-time high market cap for maybe a day, less than a day that we were actually at that level. Yeah. And then probably this level we've been at for maybe 2 or 3 days. So we are very much in thin air when it comes to market cap. Another thing that I wanted to just keep in perspective, in March, I think it was March 12th of this year, Bitcoin's price crashed all the way down to 3,800.
Dude, that feels like so long ago, right?
So 3,800 to 16,000 in 6 months.
And relatively little volatility. I mean, closing above like certain thresholds for record numbers of days.
Yeah, dude, it was back in June that we were sitting at like record low volatility. Like we had never been this low volatility.
I would say for Bitcoin, that's not saying too much. I mean, it's still relatively,
Sure,
that might be a turnoff for a lot of people, but definitely a bullish sign that that's hitting record lows.
Yeah, so you know the key takeaway here, and we're kind of being a dead horse, is like Bitcoin's moving, and you may not feel it. It's like, you know, the Earth is moving around the sun real fast,
really fast.
It's
You don't
rotating
realize,
in place very fast. We don't feel it, but it's happening, and like it's a big change that's taking place right now. Bitcoin's doing the same thing, and once we do start feeling it, you know, hold on to your hats.
So speaking of hats, I can't move on yet without asking you to put on your price prediction cap and ask you if there's any more kind of bold claims you want to add to your legacy here on Weekly Bits.
You know, I would love to, because life is about adding on to your legacy. But so what I won't do is, I said we're never going to go below 13K. I'm not going to say we're never going to go below 14K yet, because my prediction is that we're going to be barreling towards all-time highs, and then we're going to have a necessary correction. And I think that correction could possibly see us dip back into the 13Ks. Maybe not. Like, maybe it won't go that low. But I don't want to, you know, stake my bold reputation.
Now you have a very well-proven reputation. You have to be careful about what
I have a track record, and I can't be wrong. So here's what I will say. Very soon, maybe today, maybe this weekend, it doesn't like to move that much in the weekend, so maybe Monday, but very soon we're going to be at 17K. And you know, we were trading at 17K, I think, for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and that's it. So, like, you know, I keep stressing the fact, like, we are just almost at all-time highs. There's just no, you can't look back on historics and glean any information about these levels. We are in rarefied air. So that'd be my prediction. 17K very soon. After 17K, 18K. After 18K, 19K. After 19K, maybe like 19.8 or maybe even 20K, and then we'll plummet back down. That's my bold prediction. But I think that about wraps it up. And you know, this isn't the only thing to talk about, right? We had some other interesting things that happened throughout this week. One interesting thing was actually something that kind of came out last week. We got a little bit more clarity on this week, but it revolves around encryption. And I know that you had an interesting conversation with some people. Could you tell us a little bit more about what's been happening in the encryption world?
Yeah, so it's a bit tangential to Bitcoin, but at Bitcoin Magazine, I mean, we really emphasize that Bitcoin's a tool for maintaining your privacy at a time when governments and other third parties are trying to kind of limit the amount of digital privacy you can have. So the Bitcoin community last week kind of raised some alarm bells over a draft resolution from the Council in the EU that is calling for a balance between encryption and lawmakers, regulators' ability to access criminal communications. And some misleading reporting around that came out suggesting the EU is searching for actively requiring backdoors to encryption tools like Signal, for instance. That's not really true. But again, anytime this conversation comes up, I mean, we want to dive into it. We want to kind of give that perspective to our readers. So I spoke with Alex Gladstein this week about what that resolution means and kind of what's important to remember about the balance between, or like the importance of encryption in an age when governments are clearly worried about it. And I think the resolution, though not seeking a backdoor necessarily, definitely points to the fact that governments increasingly want to find ways to monitor communications as people leverage tools like Bitcoin and Signal to kind of obscure their actions.
So treat me like the dummy button, and like tell me, why is it a bad thing that they're looking for backdoors, and why does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time treating you like a dummy, Brandon. Let me see how I can do that. But yeah, why are they looking for encryption backdoors? I think they say it's because, for instance, like let's say a known terrorist commits a crime and they get their hands on their iPhone. They want to be able to break into that iPhone and figure out who the terrorist was plotting with. Are there other planned crimes that they can gain some insight into through this device? But they can't do it. They don't have the private key to access that information, and they need the technology provider, like Apple, for instance, in a smartphone's case, to give them backdoor access. And to this point, they haven't really been very successful there. But there's lots of reasons why a government would want to kind of break encryption. It could be to prevent crimes, which is on the surface is what they'll probably tell you, but it could be to control your financial activity, to
stranglehold,
right, keep you from peaceful protesting about things that they don't want you to peaceful protest about. It's definitely a slippery slope in Western countries. We have the ability to kind of stand up against resolutions like what came out in the EU, against governments wanting to access our smartphones and stuff. But in other countries around the world, places where millions and billions of people live, this technology is literally their last resort to kind of function outside of the government. And so, if I can speak for Alex Gladstein a little bit, I think the perspective he brought is that we really have a responsibility here to support these tools, to use these tools, to build up tools like Bitcoin, Signal, etc., because of the power they lend people who are really heavily monitored by their governments.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you bring up a good point, which is that, in society today, there aren't that many mainstream privacy advocates. And it's like, that's one of those things that, you don't appreciate it until it's gone.
Right.
And once it's gone, you can't really get it back. And so, I think that's a really great point and a great story for us to cover here. So yeah, really.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to ask Alex about for sure. It's like in our community, it's a little bit preaching to the choir, like, hey, everyone, we really need to cherish Bitcoin and use it and build it up for the people who truly need it. And that could be us, sooner than later. And that was his message. Like, let's support these tools because of how important they are to people in other parts of the world. So check that story out on bitcoinmagazine.com. Alex is much more eloquent about this point than I am. So watch my interview with him. But there's a bit of a lighter note, at least from my perspective. Some people probably take this pretty seriously. But a story I also saw outside of Bitcoin specifically, really, but still tangential, I think, was a bit of a cluster F that happened with Ethereum this week. I'm pretty confused by it, but I heard that an Ethereum hard fork happened, and important sections of the community didn't really see it coming. How's that even possible, Brandon? And can you be more specific about what exactly happened this week?
Yeah. So let me tell this story by both making it seem like a very big deal and then also not freaking you out too much. All right. So,
everyone, stay calm.
Yeah, stay calm. But here's basically what happened. Some amount of time back, we don't really know the amount of time. There's a lot of details here that, like, I'm not a dev, and it's very hard to suss out, exactly the details of what happened. But there was an update in Geth, which is an Ethereum library basically, and that update was put in place to fix a very large bug that was in Ethereum that no one kind of knew about except for these devs who had found it and patched it. What they didn't do is they didn't tell anyone that they had patched this bug. And I think like their thought process was that by not telling anyone, it meant that while people were slowly updating to this new software, they wouldn't run the risk of someone finding it and abusing it before it had kind of been patched and 51% of the nodes had kind of like moved on.
But they weren't emphasizing how major of an upgrade this really was.
Well, yes. And so what ended up happening is that if you didn't upgrade to this new consensus rule, then you are no longer on the consensus chain. And that's what happened a couple days ago. The Ethereum blockchain forked. There was an not accidental, an unannounced hard fork. And I think that this is really interesting.
That distinction is one of the craziest parts to me because it sounds like unannounced, the devs knew it would hard fork the network. but they didn't tell anyone, and it's under the guise of trying to hide how major this bug vulnerability was.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that is what is blowing my mind right now, that more people aren't freaked out about. I mean, if you wanted to put your Alex Jones kind of tinfoil hat on, this was a coup. This was like the devs of Ethereum, a centralized dev community, took over the Ethereum blockchain without anyone's permission, wrote in a hard fork, and forced all nodes to upgrade to this hard fork without any sort of like transparency of what was going on.
Right, and if they had malicious intent instead of the intent of just upgrading and actually protecting people from a bug, it could have been...
They could have done it, like, not anything,
damage.
but like, the fact that there wasn't review, the fact that they didn't let the vendors know beforehand. I mean, the other piece of this is like one of those people, one of those groups who didn't know that this hard fork was happening and ended up being on the wrong end of it was Infura, which is Consensus's node service. And so, that, like, apps that use Infura include like MetaMask. So MetaMask was on the wrong chain for an amount of time until they understood what exactly was going on. And
Binance stopped ETH and ERC20 withdrawals. Like, it caused major disruption.
And we don't know the exact numbers, but like I remember seeing Matt Luongo from Thesis talk about how like this did real damage to their company. And so like, this wasn't just no big deal kind of thing. This was a very big deal, and it was a calculated bet by the devs. So now let me take a breath, take a step back, and I hammered home the big deal. Let's hammer home why you shouldn't just totally freak out. Ultimately, these devs are acting benevolent, and the incentives are aligned for them to continue to act benevolently here because, it is a centralized group that runs the chain, like all the problems therein, right? But at least like it's not like some hacker group got in and changed the consensus algo, and like hopefully that would be caught. But this was not caught by the larger community at all, and it just happened. So, the take-home message here, and the thing that my hot, spicy take on this is like in 2017, Bitcoiners learned that users run the network. The user-activated soft fork of SegWit was such a big governance step. In 2020, I think Ethereans learned that the devs run the governance of Ethereum. I mean, it's not really up to the users. It is up to the devs. So that's just a fact now based on this change. And so take that information as you will, but it is a big, big deal. And I think that more people should be talking about this.
So as a toxic Bitcoin maximalist, why should I care about this story? What is it? How does it relate to Bitcoin, or what does it illustrate about Bitcoin?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it illustrates a few things. First off, anyone on Bitcoin can run a node. Like, you don't have that same centralized node issue like you did with Infura, where all of these apps all of a sudden went to the wrong chain. It's a little bit more decentralized in that aspect. It's more decentralized in the code, developer side of things, in that you're not going to have developers collude and create a hard fork for you to go on. Now, I will say there have been instances in the past where Bitcoin devs have released a patch without kind of explaining how important that patch was for people to upgrade on, but it didn't create a hard fork. You didn't have a backwards incompatible fork in Bitcoin that like split the chain because of this upgrade. So there's nuance, there's difference, but I would say that the final kind of point is that Bitcoin is a much simpler code. The chances of there being this kind of catastrophic failure, this was a catastrophic failure, are just so much less in Bitcoin because it's simple on the base layer. So there's a lot of strengths that can be highlighted in Bitcoin because of these weaknesses in Ethereum. And like most importantly of all, if you have a node, if you own your private keys, you run Bitcoin. No devs run Bitcoin, you run Bitcoin. So that's the take-home message for me.
Definitely a big difference. I mean, on that, I'm ready to move on with my Friday. I'm ready to watch the price charts. Any other big stories you think we need to talk about, or can we let the people go here?
I mean, I think that the Masters are coming up. I think they're on right now. Maybe, kick back, enjoy the Bitcoin prices, watch some people hit balls in the holes, and enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Weekly Bear.